Let alone.
Bill and Lee?
Concerts by The Who.
No, restart the clip.
From the country's point of view, because there's so many people employed, there's so much money generated on this.
It's doubtful that they would ever lose money.
Joanne and Michelle?
Was it the Stones?
Yes, it was. A report about the million ticket applications that had been received today in 1976 for the Rolling Stones UK tour later that year. Well, now a report from today in 1987. What is this story about? Start the clip.
Many were millionaires.
Joanne and Michelle?
Sorry. The Duchess of Windsor's jewellery being sold in Geneva.
Correct. Today in 1987, it went on to become the largest jewellery auction in history, raising more than £31 million. Let's see some more of those gems.
The first lot was a gold, ruby and sapphire clip by Cartier. The estimated price was £4,000, but in fact it went for 6 times that. Prices look like they're going through the 10th big top.
Well, now some music from the charts today in 1974. Can you name the band and the song? I need both for a correct answer. Start the clip. Bill and Lee?
Mud and Tiger Feet.
No, restart the clip. Bill and Lee?
Mud, That's Right.
No, restart the clip. No, it is Mud in the charts, of course, with The Cat Crept In from 1974, and that record made it to number 2 in the charts. Here's how. And Bill and Lee, we hope you're not creeping out because you're sitting there on 0 at the end of round 1. Joanne and Michelle setting a strong early lead with 20. Right, on to our TV round. A selection of classic programmes which were on the air on this very day in years gone by. We'll have 3 clips for Bill and Lee first, and our usual, not too difficult questions to follow.
So in the south ring we've got Shep, Blue Peter. And he's got a real good opponent, George Younger of Thropton, Gordon Younger, who was one of the best lightweights we have. So we'll see Blue Peter's style. Get a sheep doctor round the moon. Oh, he's away! Oh!
Don't you wish you had one to go back to? Is this the way you want to live? Is this the best that socialism can offer you? Oh, you better learn to throw better than that if you want a revolution.
And if there is, you'll be one of the first to go.
Well, if there is, I'd accept.
£350, £350. Oh, come on now, gentlemen. This is only a slightly tarnished reputation. £400. Despite the affair with his secretary. £450, which he subsequently confessed to. £500 and a good home. £600 and a good time.
Bill and Lee, just out of interest, can you identify those clips?
Blue Peter.
It was Go With Noakes, in fact, from 1976, but you might have thought Blue Peter because of the commentary, of course. Second one?
No idea. No idea.
It was Nancy Astor from 1982. The third?
Tracy Ullman Show.
It was A Kick Up the 80s from 1981. Your point-scoring questions coming up. John Noakes was accompanied by Shep on Go With Noakes. What was the name of the original Blue Peter dog?
Petra.
Correct. In 1994, John Noakes was one of the presenters of Next, a magazine show for the over 50s. Which other former Blue Peter host was also involved in that series?
Peter Purvis.
No, it was Valerie Singleton. Who starred as Nancy Astor?
No idea.
Lisa Harrow. What was Nancy Astor's claim to fame in 1919?
First Lady MP in Parliament.
Yes, she became the first woman to take her seat in the House of Commons. Who was the female member of the Kick Up the 80s team you saw?
Tracy Ullman.
Correct. Tracy Ullman's own show in America helped to launch which cartoon series?
Simpsons.
Is right. And we have 3 questions coming up now to test the memories of Joanne and Michelle.
Charming, signore, to escort you. They are, the French say, distingués. What do the English say?
Knobs.
Nobles.
Dirty filter in the coffee machine. I would never go away and leave a dirty filter in a coffee machine.
It's like the Three Bears, isn't it? Check the porridge.
Well, come on, Mrs. Wembley. Let's have a nice cup of tea and go to bed, eh?
I have never left a dirty filter in a coffee machine.
Of course you haven't, Goldilocks.
No, hold on. When all the lights were out when we arrived, Mrs. Gulliver always leaves some lights on.
Oh, I've gone all tingly now.
Shall I phone Ghostbusters?
Joanne and Michelle, can you put names to those programmes?
Was the first one Hugh and I?
It was Hugh and I, yes, from 1964. The second?
The Triffids.
The Day of the Triffids from 1981. And the third?
On the Up.
Right, from 1991. Your point scoring coming up. Terry Scott and Hugh Lloyd were the stars of Hugh and I. In Terry Scott's later series, Scott On, he was teamed up for the first time with which comedy actress?
June Whitfield.
Correct. The writer of Hugh and I was Dave Chapman, who later wrote the series in which Terry Scott and June Whitfield first starred as husband and wife. What was it called?
Terry and June.
No, it was Happy Ever After. Who wrote The Day of the Triffids?
I don't know.
John Wyndham. John Duttine played Bill Mason in that version. Which singer and future Dallas star played the same role in the 1963 film? It was Howard Keel. Dennis Waterman starred as EastEnder Tony Carpenter in On the Up. What was the name of his character in The Sweeney?
George Carter.
Correct. Who played Mrs. Wembley the cook in On the Up?
Joan Sims.
He's right. So at the end of round 2, we find Bill and Lee on 20 points, very firmly off 0, but Joanne and Michelle still in the lead with 35. Now to round 3. Famous faces. On the video wall, we have 4 years, and hiding behind each year, a well-known person in a classic clip from the Today's the Day archive. Bill and Lee.
1937, please.
1937.
When the mayor of Los Angeles has to get someone to inaugurate the new tramcar service, whom should he select but Shirley Temple to act as principal at the ceremony? He presents her with an official card.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
And now Shirley adds the role of tram conductress to her lengthy repertoire. She takes the fares.
Thank you. All aboard!
All aboard with Shirley Temple today in 1937. That year, she played the title role in a film about an orphan girl who goes to live with her grandfather in the Swiss Alps. What was the film called?
Heidi.
Correct. Joanne and Michelle.
1982.
1982.
I had no notion of what the country was like. I mean, it was based on Douglas Fairbanks and the Hollywood bath scandals. I thought, you know, that you'd walk up Broadway and you'd see girls in bathtubs. It was, to a young boy of 3, was a very exciting prospect.
Alistair Cook talking today in 1982 about his first impressions of New York. Which radio programme, originally planned to run for 13 weeks, has he been presenting for more than 50 years?
Is it Letter from America?
It is Letter from America. And Bill and Lee, your choice.
1980, please.
1980.
Prince Andrew is following in the footsteps of his brother, Prince Charles, who passed out from the college here to become a helicopter pilot. In 2 years' time, Prince Andrew is due to join the fleet with the more elevated rank of sub-lieutenant.
Prince Andrew being inspected by his mother at his passing out parade today in 1980. What rank did he hold at the time?
Midshipman.
He's right. And Joanne and Michelle, you were left with 1967.
We shall be discussing, I'm sure, the subject matter that is on the minds of so many people today, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
Hubert Humphrey, speaking about plans to limit nuclear weapons today in 1967. Which office did he hold at the time?
Vice President.
Of?
America.
Of the United States. Right. So at the end of that round, we find Bill and Lee on 30 points, but Joanne and Michelle grimly hanging on to their 15-point lead with 45. Now, fingers back on buzzers for the round which can decide who goes on to this afternoon's final and who goes home. 5 points for every question. It's time for our quickfire playoff. Born today in 1805, who wrote the stories The Emperor's New Clothes and The Ugly Duckling? Bill and Lee?
Hans Christian Andersen.
Is right. What was Hans Christian Andersen's nationality? Bill and Lee?
Danish.
Correct. Today in 1959, which newsreader was chosen to stand as Liberal candidate for the constituency of Hereford? It was Robin Day, who stormed out of a live interview with Sir Robin, having been referred to as Bill and Lee?
John Knott.
Well done. Robin referred to him as a here today, gone tomorrow politician, and he walked out. He was the Defence Secretary at the time. Sir Alec Guinness was born today in 1914. In which film starring Richard Harris in the title role did Sir Alec play King Charles I? Bill and Lee?
Cromwell.
Correct. In which TV series did Sir Alec Guinness first play spy catcher George Smiley? Joanne and Michelle?
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Correct. Today in 1976, the Order of Merit was conferred on Lord Kenneth Clarke. Which major TV series on Western art did he write and present? Bill and Lee?
Civilization.
Correct. One of Lord Clarke's sons is a former Conservative minister. Bill and Lee?
Alan Clark.
Correct. Today in 1966, the author of The African Queen died. Who was he? Joanne and Michelle?
Forrester. C.S. Forrester.
Is right. Who played Charlie I'll finish the question. Who played Charlie Allnut in the film version of The African Queen? Joanne Michelle?
Humphrey Bogart.
Is right. And just look what happened in that round. We had Bill and Lee catching up and overtaking Joanne and Michelle, then Joanne and Michelle fighting back, and it all hung on that last question because we have ended our quick-fire playoff with a dead heat. So, with 60 points each, it's fingers staying on buzzers for one further question, which will decide who goes on to this afternoon's final and who goes home. Right, here goes. Which international code is named after its American inventor who died today in 1872? Joanne and Michelle?
Morse code.
The Morse code is right. So that means that Joanne and Michelle have made it through to this afternoon's final in just a few moments with 65 points. But I'm afraid we have to say goodbye to Bill and Lee, so narrowly beaten. But you don't leave empty-handed. I have a unique consolation prize for you. Newspapers that were printed and published on the days that you were born. Bill, on your birthday, German wartime propaganda was claiming 50,000 frogs and toads were to be served in London restaurants in order to ease the appalling catering situation. Of course, it was all untrue, as per usual. And Lee, on your birthday, the Observer reported the launch of a new synthetic meat in West Germany. The product, made from specially treated soya beans, was called TVP, and, said the reporter, resembled a purplish gravel. I found it helpful, he said, not to look directly at it while eating.
Very much.
A cheerful thought. And now it's your turn at home, whatever you're eating, to have a chance to win 2 round-the-world air tickets.
Inevitably, it was Jeff Boycott, committee man, who opened the practice, looking as good as ever.
Cricketer Jeff Boycott in action today in 1984. Which county team did he play for? A. Worcestershire, B. Yorkshire, or C. Sussex? If you know the answer, ring 0891 339900. One winner, selected at random from the right answers, can choose an electronic personal organiser or a colour television. 5 runners-up win a copy of the new Today's the Day book. They all get a chance to compete for our grand prize, a pair of round-the-world air tickets. That's 0891 339900, and the lines stay open until midnight. And the answer to yesterday's question, Christine Keeler was involved in the Profumo affair.
And we'll give you that question and the phone number once again, as usual, right at the end of the programme. Well, it's time to welcome back our reigning champions from yesterday. They are Colin and Chris Davis. And before we move on to the video wall, let's find out a little bit more about today's challenges. Joanne, you love keeping fit and cooking. You're trying to have it both ways, aren't you?
Absolutely.
What sort of dishes do you cook?
I like doing absolutely anything. Italian, Indian, a little bit on the exotic side. I've cooked
What exotic dishes have you cooked?
ostrich meat.
Ostrich meat?
Yeah.
What does it taste like?
It tastes a little bit like beef steak. It's got a distinctive flavour.
And how do you cook it? What way?
Just grill it, do a nice sauce with it, an orange sauce.
Oh, great. Well, that's me sorted out for dinner afterwards. Michelle, you have several connections with show business.
Well, yeah, when I lived at home with my parents, the house I lived in for 20 years in Chiswick is next door to the house in 2.4 Children. So every time it comes on at the beginning, big cheer.
And pangs of nostalgia.
Well, yeah, my dad says, oh, that hedge doesn't look as nice as it used to in my day.
OK, well, let's see how our video wall looks. There are 8 clips here, some more difficult to answer questions about than others, so you do have a choice. And as you can see, the clips are worth 5, 10 or 15 points. Joanne and Michelle, as challengers, you kick off.
Middle right, please.
Middle right for 10 points.
Underwear down under, where my Australian colleague describes the latest lingerie fashions with all the authority of a connoisseur.
These are lingerie hostess pants for wearing under slacks or ski pants. They're also sensational as outerwear under a hostess skirt. Well, that's what the girls are nearly wearing these days.
The latest looks in underwear from Down Under, on show today in 1966. For 10 points, which Sydney-based company is Australia's leading producer of foundation wear?
Revlon?
No, offer it to Colin and Chris.
Max Factor.
No, I'd be surprised if you had known, actually. In fact, I'd have wanted to ask a few more questions if you had known. It is Burley, who I believe are now owned by Dunlop. And Colin and Chris, it's your choice.
Left middle, please.
Left middle for 10 points.
Argentina hasn't experienced this kind of national jubilation since she won the World Cup. For President Leopoldo Galtieri, it's a remarkable turnabout. 3 days ago, police fired on anti-government demonstrators. Today, he can do no wrong.
Argentinians celebrating the invasion of the Falklands today in 1982. For 10 points, who was the governor of the Falklands at the time of the invasion?
Was it Ryder?
No, offer it to Joanne and Michelle.
Rex Hunt.
It was Rex Hunt. And it's your choice.
Top right.
Top right for 5 points.
It looks unbelievable, but Coco the gorilla indicated several weeks ago she was ready for a new friend. The little pet seems to sense Coco's affection. If ever there was an odd couple, this is it. Coco clearly is in the best of spirits.
Extraordinary pictures. A new playmate for Coco the gorilla today in 1985. For 5 points, which continent do gorillas come from?
Africa?
Correct. Colin and Chris, your choice.
Bottom right, please.
Bottom right for 15 points.
And now, as the policy of Western defence continues, come pictures of the first operational squadron of jet fighters in the Royal Navy. With fast-flying aircraft like this, the Navy is keeping right ahead with its countermeasures against submarine attack.
The Navy's first jet blasting off today in 1950. For 15 points, which branch of the armed forces operates aircraft for the Royal Navy?
Well, the Fleet Air Arm.
The Fleet Air Arm's right. Joanne and Michelle, your choice.
Yeah, bottom left.
Bottom
please.
left for 15 points.
To be in England now that April's there. For people in parts of the Midlands, that has meant waking this morning to find their countryside overlaid with snow.
A sudden cold snap today in 1968. For 15 points, in which year was Britain's record cold temperature of minus 27.2 degrees Celsius reached?
1956?
No, offer it to Colin and Chris.
Would it be the winter of 1946/47?
No, it was 1982. It was on the 10th of January in 1982 at Braemar, a record, incidentally, that was nearly beaten last winter when the temperature dropped to minus 27 degrees Celsius at Altnahara. We move rapidly on. Colin and Chris, to your next choice.
Top middle, please.
Top middle for 10 points.
Wham's warm-up in Hong Kong is exactly the show they'll be doing in China, give or take a quiver. A local audience, well tuned to the latest in pop fashions, turned up in force. But only a Peking audience can tell them if communism is ready to go-go.
Wham preparing to conquer China today in 1985. For 10 points, can you name the 2 members of Wham?
George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley.
Is right. Joanne and Michelle.
Bottom middle.
Bottom middle for 10 points.
Tarka, my Rottweiler pup, she's never met a lamb before.
She rather likes this, and you would think that it is absolutely safe to let her go into a field of sheep. It's not safe to let any dog go alone into any field of sheep, because dogs are hunting animals.
A reminder that dogs and sheep don't mix today in 1984. For 10 points, who was the presenter of that report?
Phil Drabble.
Is right. And Colin and Chris, you are left with top left for 5 points.
There's still a fountain of molten rock 300 feet high above Mauna Loa, but the latest word is that the outpouring is slowing a little. For Hawaii's business community, the volcanoes are a gift from the gods, bringing American tourists pouring in for joyrides over the craters. Scientists are now hopeful that Mauna Loa will gradually decrease in intensity.
A river of lava drawing the tourists to Hawaii today in 1984. For 5 points, what is the capital of the state of Hawaii?
Honolulu.
Is right. So, at the end of that round, we find Joanne and Michelle on 25 points, Colin and Chris just in the lead with 30. Neck and neck stuff here as we come to our final round, and it's time to beat the clock. 60 seconds of questions about the 2nd of April, but of course only one team member can play, and reigning champions must take it in turn. So, Colin, that means you're in the hot seat.
Thank you, sir.
Let's go. 60 seconds starting now. Today in 1967, Vanessa Redgrave's sister married actor John Clark. Who is she?
Miranda.
No, Lynn Redgrave. Today in 1969, the film Ring of Bright Water was premiered. Who starred in it with her husband Bill Travers?
Virginia McKenna.
Correct. Born today in 1926, which Australian racing driver was known as Black Jack?
Brabham.
Correct. On TV today in 1974, which children's programme featured Tony Hart and Pat Kiesel?
Oh, it's a puppet thing. Can't remember the name.
Vision On. Today in 1976, the Order of Merit was conferred on which former Prime Minister?
Margaret Thatcher.
No, Macmillan. Starring at the London Palladium today in 1953, who topped the charts with Just Walkin' in the Rain?
Sacha Distel.
No, Johnny Ray. Born today in 1840, which French author wrote the novels Germinal and La Terre?
Voltaire.
No, Émile Zola. Today in 1982... I'll finish the question. Today in 1982, who was spending his last day as president of the National Union of Mine Workers?
Joe Gormley.
Is right. Now, Joanne, your target to beat is 60 points. Let's go. 60 seconds starting now. Celebrating a birthday today, who played Margot Ledbetter in TV's The Good Life?
Penelope Keith.
Correct. Today in 1985, Dame Peggy Ashcroft won an Oscar for her role in which film?
The Passage to India.
Correct. Born today in 1940, which racing driver and former motorcyclist was known as Mike the Bike?
I don't know.
Mike Halewood. On TV today in 1973, which comedy starred Jack Smethurst and Rudolph Walker? Love Thy Neighbour. Today in 1968, who took a seat in the House of Commons and went on to become John Major's first Home Secretary? Kenneth Baker. Starring on the London stage today in 1972, who had a chart hit with On Mother Kelly's Doorstep?
Sorry, it's gone.
Danny LaRue. Born today in 742, who became King of the Franks and Holy Roman Emperor? Charlemagne. Today in 1995, America's First Lady met the mountaineer after whom she was named. Who is he? Sir Edmund Hillary. In cinemas today in 1936, who starred as an opera singer? I'll finish the question. Who starred as an opera singer opposite Nelson Eddy in the film Rosemarie?
I'm sorry.
It was Jeanette MacDonald. Well, Joanne, it is pretty tough when that spotlight is on you and the questions come tumbling thick and fast. You and Michelle have ended our contest with 45 points. Colin and Chris, who must have been thinking for a moment or three that they were going to be seeing The Last of Us, are our victors with 60. And that means that Colin and Chris stay our reigning champions, so we'll see you both again tomorrow. But we have to say goodbye to Joanne and Michelle. You leave, however, with our special consolation prize, copies of the Today's the Day book and newspapers printed and published on the days that you were born. And finally, Today's the Day in 1873, Britain's very first railway sleeper carriage went into service. Serving the route between Glasgow and London King's Cross, passengers had to pay 10 shillings and supply their own bedding. And just in case you haven't noticed, there has been a slight improvement since then. We're back as usual tomorrow here on BBC2 at 4, and no snoozing allowed. Good afternoon.
And a reminder of the Today's the Day phone question. Cricketer Jeff Boycott was in action today in 1984. Which county team did he play for? A. Worcestershire, B. Yorkshire or C. Sussex? Call 0891 339900. The lines stay open until midnight.
There are some bright ideas heading your way this spring in a new series of Homefront on BBC2. Find out how to tile with style and transform your bathroom. Add a splash of colour to your kitchen. And visit a couple of first-time buyers who are restoring their Victorian house. Style on a shoestring with the new series of Homefront, starting tomorrow at 8:30 on BBC2.
Fashion designer Donna Karan joins Oprah at 5 o'clock here on BBC2. But first, the usual frantic half hour in the kitchen.